Okay, so we start asset management. Basically, an basic asset setup. Okay, you'll be having the asset setup. You just execute it same way we do for Enquest. Next, and it will create its own folder, just like Enquest, in the Bit Plus folder. So mine is already installed, but if you proceed to the next stages, it will create for you a folder. Once you are done, in not finish because I have it already. So in local disk C, same, just like Bit Plus, you'll get the asset manager. Now, basically, after installation, you need to replace files depending on the version. Same way we do for Enquest. License handler, it shares the same license handler with Enquest. So if there is Enquest installed, you don't need to do licensing because you could already be running. But if you don't have Enquest, then you'll have to use the license handler. Then we also have the XML file, just like we do for Enquest. So if you need to rename or you need to change or point to a different folder, same steps, same process like Enquest. You can see. So there is no much change. It is basically same setup, same port numbers, everything is an equivalent to Enquest while installing. So once you're done, I will expect you'll just have your shortcut, just like Enquest. And that will be your login screen. So you can see you'll have your companies, same way we do in Enquest. If you close the year, in asset it will be showing the physical year, unlike in Enquest where we just have the database names. So for here it will show you the physical year, what is your year, all the years will be listed if you have split and all that. You can create new company if you want to create new database. So basically, just like Enquest, you can see you are just setting up the company name, the address and all that, then you give the connection, then of course the physical year. Once you're done, you just press on save. Okay, so already I have a database. So once you're there, you just log in and so that is the main screen. Whatever the message has come, that is an alert for depreciation. I will address that once we are done. So what menus we are having for asset? Basically, the system is not as complex as Enquest. It is basically for management of asset. So you will be able to manage all your assets within your premises or without the premises. Then it will enable you to do the depreciation so that you're able to know the values of whatever assets you are holding. We have a purchase module. In the event the customer is not having any other financial system, they can purchase through the asset management. We have the depreciation, insurance details to capture the insurance policies that you'll be having and all that. Service visits, those are basically the annual maintenance contract for your services. If there are assets that are being serviced either on site or they have to go to the vendor to be serviced, you can capture all those services and document them in the system. We have barcode allocation. This is meant for purpose of reconciliation of the assets. So just like in Enquest where you have physical stock take, in asset you can also do a physical stock take that is called asset reconciliation to be able to determine whether the assets are still in the same locations where they were supposed to be. And normally we'll be having an aluminium tag, otherwise the customer can decide. Normally the Endeavour provides, and if the customer does not want, can outsource, and we can just integrate their code numbers. We have receipt notes, and receipt notes are basically meant to receive assets back to the system if for whatever reason they left the premises and they left through the system. We have export and import. These are facilities meant to export and import the main data. I'll be touching there. Finally, let me just start now. The parts that we'll be having, just like Enquest, you have the XML. If you want to check the XML info, company license details, like we said, we are sharing the license details. If the customer is having any Endeavour system, desktop system, then you are going to share the license details. We have general settings. You can set your password policies, user roles, though now the user roles, they are not similar like Enquest, so this is how they look.
So you mean if somebody is having Enquest there, they don't need a different license for?
No, they need a different license. The only thing is the licensing setup.
Yes.
Yeah. So the user roles will look like this. So you have to tick whatever is applicable. If you need to view, if it is this particular XML info, then you tick. If they have to add, edit, and delete, that is the match we give in assets. Then the user type is the admin and all that. And when you are creating a new database for the first time in Enquest, in asset, you have to assign the roles for the item. Yeah, let's set up right. So if I get admin and other settings, you have to assign these two particulars: the cost center and the location. Failure to, you will not be able to see the list of the assets that are in the system. So if you are installing for the first time, make sure you give these rights. Whatever the cost centers and locations the customer will be having, you have to issue these particular rights for the user to be able to see whether an admin or non-admin.
So assets we can delete.
Yes, you can. So that is we have serial number generation, that is pre-fill settings in an asset where you allocate, if it is a location, what is the pre-fill setting for that location, that is what we are calling over here serial number generation. Barcode scanner settings, that is basically for setting up the barcode scanners, and these are the types of scanners that the system will be supporting, but mostly will not be setting the scanners because this was an old method they used to use. But right now we have a different way of setting up because basically the scanners will be coming at this particular point of reconciliation. When you are doing barcode reconciliation, asset reconciliation, you will be able to get an option. If I add and you download, yeah, we are using this. So mostly we'll be using CP30, but if there is anybody and then there is a file, and then if there is any other scanner now, if you will be having a customer having the old scanners, then you will set from the barcode scanners and they will be listed here. You just need to pick the node. Then year details, that is for purpose of closing the year. Just like Enquest, we have close year. So you do your close year and close year process. Customized field setup and lookup data. Same functionalities like Enquest. You just create them, then you apply them where they are needed. Then we have now the masters. Now these are the asset type. And asset type, there are things you will need to know. Depending on each asset, you will need the customer to tell you which method of depreciation they are using for those asset types. The system is supporting the straight line, declining balance, year-wise and month-wise. These are the ones that are available. These you could equate them to Enquest as cost type, like latest weighted average and all those. But now for asset management on depreciation matters, these are the methods we have. And then you have to decide whether in percentage or on amount. Then they have to issue the company rate of depreciation. What rate are they depreciating that particular asset? So you will find out that different types of assets will have different types of rates. So the accountant or rather the financial department will be able to give you all those details. Then we have the international rate for depreciation for that particular asset. They could be the same as the company, or they could be different because the international are standard, but company rate might vary. Then we have depreciation ledger name and depreciation debit ledger name. So basically, in the event you have a financial system and you are posting, like for example, you're integrating with Enquest, then the ledger that you have created in Enquest for these particular asset types, you have to map them here for purpose of posting journals at the end of the year when you are closing the year, so that they post to your financial system. So far the integration is only done with Enquest and Tally. There is no other integration that has been done. It's only Enquest and Tally. That is for asset type. Then you get the categories, how the customers categorize the items. So here there is nothing much, it is just about adding and you proceed. Now you only need to map to the asset type. So you create the category. Is it an fixed asset? Is it like computer and accessories? Is it furniture and fittings, lightings? So depending on which asset types the customers provided. Acquisition, that is meant for purpose of purchasing. Unit, which is the unit of measure for those particular products, but since they are assets, we really not be using this unless you will be required to say to purchase. Only then you can define the unit. But if you're not purchasing through asset system, then you don't need the unit while defining. Then the location. Location is the geographical location of that particular asset. Is it situated in Kenya, Nairobi, Kisumu, Kakamega? The geographical location. Then we have the cost center, the actual location of utilization for that asset. It could be in Endeavor, Nairobi, but in finance department. Therefore, finance department becomes the cost center where the item, or rather the asset, is being utilized. That is the cost center. We have employee. Employee, what happens in the asset management, you can tag assets to employees so that at any particular point you are able to retell or recall which particular employee is having a particular asset. So in that case, you first create the employees, then you will be assigning assets to those employees. We have the vendor, that is basically supplier. Currency. Which currency are you using? Just like Enquest, the system is multi-currency. You can have multiple currencies for different assets, and of course you'll have to now define the base currency. Just like in Enquest, you pick and you add. There is no much involved. You just pick, add, give the symbol, the currency name, and that is it. If it is the base currency, then we take that. Exchange rate, basically for purpose of exchange. Insurance companies, which companies are insuring your assets, then you can create those companies. Insurance brokers, if you are going through brokers, then you create the brokers as well. Then we have the insurance policy. You can also add the policies, which policy number. Then of course there are the attachments. You can attach relevant attachments pertaining to that particular policy. If it is insured by the company direct, if it is insured by an insurance broker, and you can also fetch the broker details for that policy. and you can be able to attach that policy to a particular item. Annual maintenance contract, AMC, which assets have annual maintenance. So you can create any asset that has a maintenance contract. You can tag it, like you create the maintenance number and all that with the supplier dates and all those number of visits as per the contract. Then you attach the list of assets that are responsible, or rather that are being covered under that AMC, so that you can be able to get notifications when the AMC is due. You can get notifications when the visits are due. You'll be able to track all that. Then we have asset item. So asset item basically is the asset name. So what happens in assets, if we are creating, let us say a desktop, so the asset name will be desktop. But unlike in Enquest, where you create one item and put the quantities, so that you say I have an HP desktop and I have 20 of them, in asset we are creating the individual asset. So you create the name could be one, but when now you are creating the asset item itself, now there will be multiple, so that if I come to the system, I'll be able to get all the individual items. You can see like 3 drawer pedestal, 3 drawer. So we are creating the individual items. We have nowhere we are going to insert the quantities for those assets. It is every asset on its own. It's kind of, they are standalone on themselves. Then of course tax setup, if you want to get get returns and all that for the assets, just like in Enquest, same way. You give the percentage, the rates and all that. Asset condition. So you can define your conditions for your assets, so that at any particular point you can tag, is it active, is it damaged, broken, whatever the conditions that the customer will be having, you will be able to attach them. Then now asset item. These are basically now the transaction. The masters are basically like in Enquest, every module has its own masters. So all the masters have been defined in the master part. Then we go to asset item. That is what you could call more of a transaction process in the asset system. So we have asset item details. You will be able now to get all the assets and their particular details. What is the cost center? What is the location, asset, category, all those particular details. And if you double click, you can be able to get further details that are not being displayed on the main page. Acquisition, status of the asset condition. Do you want to calculate depreciation? So if you, there are other items you might not need to calculate depreciation. Best example could be land. For some reason, hardly will land depreciate. It's always appreciating, but we do not have an appreciation facility in the system. So you appreciate it outside the system and you post the values of whatever you got. I will illustrate where to post the values. So basically for land, then this or any other asset that you feel that you don't want to depreciate, then you leave the checkbox unchecked. Purchase info, you get to capture all the purchase details for that particular item. Depreciation details, they will be given there. What method are you using to depreciate for that item? And basically these will be picking from the asset type. Mostly we have date of service, purchase value, book value, and we have already given description there, like date of service, when the item was put into service, the purchase value. The book value is the value of that particular asset at the time you are implementing this asset software. So that will be the book value. If they are depreciated, then they will be having an accumulated depreciation value for that particular period. They have appreciated up to the point you are now introducing the asset management. Then you will put that value. Then the salvage value. Basically, there are companies that will depreciate the asset to zero value. There are others who will not depreciate to zero value. They will have their own value they want to depreciate the asset onto. So if they have a set value for those assets, that is the salvage value. So they will give you the system will depreciate until it hits that value. So once it hits that value, it will no longer calculate depreciation past that particular value. Then you will get your depreciation calculations if you want to see. So system will calculate once and prorate for the entire period up to where the value becomes 0, the book value goes to 0, or up to where you hit your salvage value. So you get all those calculations. If you have the international depreciation set, it will also calculate for you. Any other attachments you have for this particular item, you can attach pictures, insurance policies, and then of course customized fields that we had seen earlier. Once you create, they will be tagged to that particular asset. Then you have a purchase order in the event you are purchasing. So you raise a purchase order, you turn it into a purchase of the asset. So that is if they don't have any other financial, but most customers will be having separate financial system, so hardly will they purchase through the asset management. But if they are willing to do so, then good and well, you'll be able to purchase. So you can see now there you are defining the details of purchase, what is the cost, the VAT, if there are any subtotals. So once you put a product, so like if I do that and I say I'm getting that high cabinet cost center, I will allocate to whatever cost center it is going. Number 5, and that is it. I will put my amount right here. Then cost is maybe that much. Then once you list, you add to the grid. So it has to be within the financial year. So that is why it is refusing, and my financial year I think was 2013. So let me assume from there. So date of service as well, I'll have to be within my financial year for me to be able to indicate the date of service. And then I will add to the grid. So you can see you'll get all your calculations and details over there. And then you just need to save. So I don't have then you save. So I may not be having the correct details for the items. Do that. Save. So basically once it is saved, it adds into your asset, so that when you run your reports of additions, you'll be able to find those asset additions within that year. Then that is purchase. Asset movement. There could be a reason you want to move an asset from one location to another. You want to change from the initial cost center to another cost center, from the initial category you had assigned that particular asset. You can be able to do all that. So you pick the option, I want to move an asset type. So if I move an asset type, then I will be able to pick move to what asset type. Then you pick the asset that you want to move. Over here we are searching using F2. So if I want, maybe this is a cabinet, and okay, so you can tick. So whatever it is in furniture, so I want to move it to consumables. So that's how we do the movement of assets from one location to another, from asset type to another, from acquisition or category, whatever you want to move. Then we have asset that is depreciation calculation. So at this particular point is where you are able to calculate. Once you set your parameters well, you are able to calculate your depreciation either based on the asset type either based on the asset category or based on the individual asset item. So I can calculate anytime I want. So you just pick, if it is per item, you can pick like the two and process. So once it is done, it gives a progress bar, top, done. So if I wanted to pick per category, then I will process for that entire category, and because of my E and all that, that is why I'm unable to calculate. So but if you are within your valid financial year and all that, you'll be able to process without any errors. Then asset addition. So asset addition basically is after assets have been reevaluated. You know, you can revalue your assets. So once they have been revalued, if the value is upward, then you do asset addition. And if asset is revalued downwards, then you do asset deductions. That means it is going to reduce the value of that asset or increase if you are going to use asset addition. Then we have adjustment. Adjustments are just meant for adjusting the figures. So when I started my system, I captured a value of 50,000. But later on I'm realizing it was supposed to be 40,000 or 60,000. Then I can adjust that particular value. But unlike on asset addition and deductions, this one, it is going to show you the asset and what amount you are changing. It is like you are either increasing the value of that asset or reducing. That more of stock journals in nQuest. Then asset that adjustment is more of a stock take. You are just readjusting the values. You are not really going to change the quantities, individual quantities of that. You are only adjusting the full amount. Then insurance details. If there are any insurance details for a certain asset, you can tag them. Once you create them in the insurance policy that we had seen in the masters, you can now come and pick the policy number, pick the insurance policy, and attach the relevant assets for that, so that you're able to get reports on which assets are running on what policy. Service contracts, service visits, sorry. So you can add the service visits for a particular asset. So you need to pick the vendor, the MC that is there, and you can describe the natures, the problems, whatever solutions were given by the person visiting, and all that. Is under MC, you can indicate. Is without MC, you can also indicate delivery note. In the event the asset may be required to get out of the company, then you do a delivery for that particular asset. They can also attach the repair charges for that particular asset, so that you are able to maintain your documents, and you can get all the attachments for that particular those particular entries. Receipt note. Basically, on the service visit, you saw the delivery note. So once the asset is returned, then you can bring it back by using receive note. So, but we do not have a direct link like we do in nQuest, where you are pointing to a particular receive note. That option is not available. But if you want it, of course, you know the drill. You request for it, but as of now, we do not have that. Then asset disposal. So it comes to a point where you need to dispose your assets. So if you need to dispose and you want to know the value that you are disposing and whether you are making a loss or a profit, then you use asset disposal. At that particular point, you'll be able to see the loss value and all that. Then just like purchases, you can also do an asset sell from the system, so that you are able to know what profits you are making out of that particular asset, or what losses there will be. All of them, it will be indicating the profit or loss, current depreciation, book value at the time of sale, all that. So, and of course you are able to print. delete asset depreciation. So delete asset depreciation, basically for purpose of deleting a depreciation. I could have depreciated with the wrong values. I've corrected the values. So I need to get the correct depreciation. So I will delete the depreciation and recalculate it again. So over here you give the password, that is bit-endeavor. If it is not changed, you are able to change this particular password. There, then you decide on which assets you want to delete. So the moment you delete, like if I take this first item and process, deleted successfully. So if I went to the asset item and checked on that particular item, this one, you will not see the depreciation done. You can see. So it has been deleted, so that I can rectify my values and maybe say a salvage of 20,000 and save. That is what I wanted to correct, for instance. Then once I save, I can now calculate again. I just use the same item process. So if you go back to the item, you will be able to see now again the depreciation is calculated, unlike the first one that went for 7 years to 0 value. Now it is going back to 4 because my salvage is at 20,000. That means by the 4th year I have closed my depreciation. We have pivot report. Of course, for purpose of pivoting, you get all the values just like in the MIS reports, and you create your own report, drag and drop. Same concept like sales MIS in Enquest. You create your own report and you are good to go. You can change movement history. In the event an asset was moved from one location to another and all that, you can change that. Then like I had said earlier, the integration is done between Tally, so you can post to Tally the depreciation values. And remember, we are not going to post individual assets. That you have to be clear on that. We are posting as per the type, asset type. So it is computers. We have, because on the financial system they will not be creating the individual assets, they will be lumping them up, so it will be per type. That is why on the asset type you have seen the debit and credit ledger for depreciation. So to those ledgers we are going to post. So it is between Tally and Enquest. Those are the only integration we have so far. Then backward asset reconciliation, like I indicated earlier, you can reconcile your assets. If you have the gadgets, you pick CP30. If you have Node, you pick, and you download the assets. Once you download, system will be able to tell you what are the excess list of assets, what are the assets that were okay. And of course, all data will be able to tell you which asset is missing on its location. You can also allocate or deallocate barcodes from here, and you can clear existing barcodes if you want to clear. So I can pick this and this and this, and I can clear. So if I clear existing barcodes, it will clear the barcodes, so that gives me room to introduce the new barcodes. We have a logbook, basically to capture details for logbook for either vehicles or plant and machinery. So you can see this is the master for the logbook. You have reasons, type, make, model, body, the fuel, the color, the category. Then you now get the logbook itself. So on a logbook, you will be able to capture all these details. What are the chassis stroke frame for that particular asset? What is the type? What is the make? What is the body? The main year? And you can even capture the previous registration countries, if it is a second hand, the previous registration, previous owners. You can also capture who was owning these assets previously over here, previous owners. Item picture you can also attach for that particular asset on the logbook, and is it active or obsolete? or club, whatever the status that you'd have created, and as well you capture the region. It's a very small software, and we are hitting the end of it at that. So other than that, you get the reports. Now we look at the reports. Reports are classified. We have the master, we have the asset reports. You can see by the headings, you can run the reports once you are setting up on your computers. You can be able to see what the reports bring forth. I will only be able to touch on details on the, because this is the most wanted reports, IFRS reports. That is, the reports are IFRS standard. We have the IFRS report. It looks that way, so I have to run within the year. So I'll say yes and process this report. So on this report, what will I be looking at? I have the opening balances. Let me execute the report so that we are on the same page. Yeah, so it will bring asset type wise. So you can see computers fully depreciated, equipment fully depreciated, and the rates that they are depreciating. So what will you be having? You have the cost. You have as at the opening date. That is, of course, in EnQuest, the opening balances. Transfers to fully depreciated, whatever transfers. Any additions that happened within the year. Disposals and write-offs that were done within the year. Value addition within the year. So that will be either additions or deductions. Then we have the close year for that particular period. So that is when you are looking at this report cost wise, value of your assets. Then if you are looking at it depreciation wise, then we have how you started the year, the transfers within that year, the charge of the year if there were any charges applicable, reversals and disposals within the year, disposals and write-offs, and of course at the close of the year what you had depreciated. Then of course now you get your net book value. How you are getting your net book value? It is your end year cost, you minus the depreciation that happened in that particular period, and you get your value. That is category wise, and you can of course export to Excel and all that. Another report that will give you details for that depreciation will be the IFRS detailed report. And I'll do again here guys, and I will execute the report.
So
Then
the asset management, this one can be used by insurance companies to maybe do asset management for the items they are insuring.
yes, the good thing is it is not, as long as the company has assets to take care of, then they can use asset management, provided they need to manage their assets. Basically, it is work is simple, asset management. So you can fit this by page if you want to get it on the correct dimension, because it is, yeah, there you go. And if you go across, you'll be able to see opening value, additions, value, closing cost, open depreciations, and all that. Then finally, you get the net value, the book value, that is your closing balances for your assets. Yes, you had a question.
Like for the insurance companies, they insure, for example, properties, maybe other, let's say citizens. So they can use the system to know
No,
to do.
no, because those are not their assets. This is meant for company assets. So if they have their own assets like vehicles, electronics and all that. Yes, but they cannot use this to, because of course they will be having their insurance system. So this one is basically assets, assets of the company. Yeah. That is it, and of course you get now the dashboard. We have a dashboard. This is how the dashboard looks like. So you can see at the bottom right, that is where you get AMC. Which items are going to hit their AMC? The AMC is due. They will be listed, insurance and service visits. So they will always be prompting you, or rather they will be giving the list of assets which are due. Either visit, either insurance or maintenance contract. And of course help. You get to know about, just like we are doing Enquest, it's basically similar like Enquest. Registering license, same process. Updating license, same process. You can see they are similar. Nothing changes in that particular dynamic. Yeah. So I will now touch on import and exports. So what happens in assets, just like in Enquest, we have introduced the structures recently. Asset as it is structure, so you need to export. What do we do? Bit dash endeavor, same password. So these are the list of things you can export or import into the system. Now, if you want to get a template, so blank template, you say blank template and you pick on what you want. If it is a location, if it is a vendor, if it is an employee, if it's an asset type, you just pick blank. But if you need to export the entire data from the system, then you say with data template. It will export everything from the system as it is. Unlike Enquest, where we are saying that we are inactivating, in asset, we can export the entire list as it is, work on it outside the system and import it back. Provided, as usual, you don't change the asset ID, because that is more of the part number in the system, and that is what the system will be using to import. So you export and import it back. Now, I will show you something here interesting about these formats. So let me take, for example, asset item list, and I'm going to take blank for that case. Export, I pick next. While you're on this location, if you are exporting the format so that you use it to import to your new data, be sure to select all. Then next, pick a location. Let me use my desktop in that case. Asset data, you can give whatever name and save. Once you have that, you press on the Excel button to export. So I will expect it will be faster on the server, customer server. It will be much faster, unlike my PC. Yeah. Yeah, there we go. So, asset data. Everybody seeing the file? I think I had exported to desktop, yeah? Yeah. Now over here there is something that you'll have to follow religiously, otherwise if you forget that you will struggle importing the files. You will struggle importing the files. This is the format. Now it looks like that, and we are of course giving you hints on what to do. So if you are, for example, putting the depreciation method, don't worry, that is my Excel. I'll get a license to it. So if you are putting the depreciation method, like over here, item depreciation method, so we are not going to use the full names. You know, the same way we do in nQuest when you are importing the costing. We have manual cost, weighted average, and where weighted average we are not doing the name weighted average, we are doing weighted AVG. Same thing applies here, but we are giving you a keynote here, so that if it is straight line, you do SLD. If it is declining balance, you do DP. If it is year-wise, YW, and if it is month-wise, MW. Yeah. Percentage and amount, they remain. So this, you have to take care of them. You have to remember. So when you delete, you have to remember that. Now, assuming I'm deleting. Now, one thing we are saying here, the thing I was telling you that is interesting about this format is, while you are importing, do not delete this line. Don't delete it. If you delete it, system will not be able to import. It will be an invalid format. So the line has to remain. And when you are putting your data, you have to skip this particular line, that is line number 3, and your data starts from line number 4. So the format has to remain that way. Failure to, you will not be able to import. So for the entire line, we have given you an overview of how the data should be looking like. So of course, just like nQuest, the value that you don't have, you don't input, you leave it blank. But this is the format. So every file will be having its own format, but one thing can keep in mind, that line has to remain, so do not delete it.
So if you're having asset laptops, you just repeat it.
Sorry?
If you're having laptops as asset, you just repeat.
Yes. So I'll show you one customer data here. I think the data for one customer. Sure. Sure, I kept that data, but to show something. I'm not getting that. Maybe I'll share once I get that. But yeah, this file, like we said, please retain that line. Don't delete it, because it will not be imported to the system. It is part of the format, and we are saying you start your data from line number 4 instead of line number 3. So you have to skip that line. Yeah, that is it. And then we have, just like nQuest, now when it comes to importing bit-endeavor, the usual password, we have a process to follow. You don't just import anything. We have a process, you know, like in nQuest, you can't import item master before you get the categories, before you get the unit of measures. So over here, we start from bottom. You first import the location, then move to the vendor if you have, then move to the employee if you have, acquisition. It's kind of, we are going reverse. Cost center, asset, category list. Then when you get to the category list, you jump to the asset name list. Then the asset item list comes the last. That is the last to import. So we are starting from down up to the category list. Then we are going to the name. Then we are coming back to the asset item. You have to follow that procedure. Otherwise, you'll have difficulties in importing data. So that is it. And then there could be a few settings here. Sure, we have general settings, just like in Enquest, where you define a few things. You can define company settings, authorization password that will be used for authorizing, like deleting depreciations, like logging into import and export. That password will be set here. Notifications, number of days. Like we said, if you have the MC, annual maintenance contracts and insurance policies, and you want to get notifications, then you can indicate here, I need notification for 60 days, 30 days, whatever you want. The notification default store, of course, the one we are using the system. Asset format depends on how you want. Close form after save, this some of the settings we have there. Show dispose amount in IFRS report, pick photo from the asset name, pick attachment from the asset name, notify if asset not returned, so you will get notifications depending on the notification days above here. Logbook days, logbook settings, you can be able to get that. And of course the current year, that will be barcode settings, how you want the series. Is it series wise? Is it system generated barcodes? Is this asset ID wise? That you will be able to get. Depreciation settings, asset minimum value and the decimals. Then do you want to show depreciation yearly, quarterly or monthly when you go to the depreciation page on the asset item? Then are you closing books monthly or yearly? That you have to define. Then of course we have audit trail for setting the audit trail, just like we have audit trail in Enquest, you can set. Then the settings to tally and asset, right here. It is from here you will do your integration, tally server and port test. Your work is done. Purchase voucher types, you can enable Enquest configuration, the server name of asset Enquest and all that. Then of course that is it. I think that is it, unless there is a question. It is that simple, small system.
Integration, will it auto post or
It will auto post. It will auto post. It will auto post, but you have to trigger. So the moment you post over here and post to Enquest, then you can just post. So if I had a database, I'll have just posted. Because I've not integrated mine, I could have demonstrated, but yeah.
What about the device that you went for Tutor? How does it work with this?
So for the devices, what happens, you will have a scanner. Whatever the scanner the customer pays, now we have Android scanners integrated. You can set them. We have the CP30 device. What happens, the device is basically for scanning the aluminum codes, the tags, asset tags. So once you scan, you come back to the system, and under barcode we have asset reconciliation. So under asset reconciliation, you just need to add. Over here, you download. So you are downloading from the device. So if it is a CP30, then you pick there and pick the file. If it is a scanner, on normal scanner, that could be an Android or any other scanner other than CP30, then you pick what node you have set in the system, then you'll be able to download the data. So basically that is how it works. It is more of reconciling your assets so that you're able to know if they are moved from where they were, if they are missing. Yeah. any other question. Report writer we are not using, so don't really you don't really need to do anything on that. It is a feature that is not working, or rather a feature that was discontinued. So you can do location wise if you want. You can get the entire menu over there, and just like in Enquest where we have the main menu and the other menu down there, we also have the same name, but this is tree wise. So yeah, unless there is a question on that particular process, otherwise we will share the setup. You can run it on your machines, ask the license from Pradeep, and you can be able to do testings and anything, any other setting you want. But it is a simple system, direct to the point, not much involved. And they share a lot things with Enquest. So if you have the Enquest concept, you have the asset. It's only now to understand the navigation. But setting it up and everything, they are similar. So we call it a day at that. If there's any question, you can always check, delve each other.